Hi guys, this is Mrs. Cerami for 4.8 day 2. I hope 4.8 day 1 with the discriminant was okay. Any questions, please remember you can either message me on the portal before 4 or you can message your questions below the work that you post. If it's before 4, I'll answer it that day. After 4, I'll just answer it the next day, but I will always get back to you. All right, so today we're going to actually solve for the variable using imaginary numbers. It's the same process that you did with Algebra 1. So first step, we cannot factor that. So we are going to use the quadratic formula, which I would write down immediately. Press the pen. This is new for me with this pen, so please bear with me. Okay, so we're going to write negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then before I start substituting, on the bottom, I would write what the variables equal. So a equals 3, because it's already set equal to 0. B equals negative 5. And c equals 4. So now we're going to substitute that back in there. So negative b, the opposite of b, is 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 25, minus 4 times 3 times 4, all over 2a, which is 6. Just like you did with the discriminant, simplify inside the radical by multiplying first. So 25 minus, so it's going to be 12 times 4, which is 48. You're permitted to use a calculator for this, all over 6. And inside will be 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 23 all over 6. Now we can't simplify 23, but we know we can simplify a negative inside. Square root of a negative 1 is the same thing as, that's right, I. So we're going to pull the I out. So it's 5 plus or minus I root 23 over 6. And this is my final answer because I'm not able to divide all 3 coefficients and constants by the same number. This is my final answer. Now, again, if we look at the determinant, it's a negative inside, which means we're going to have 2 complex answers, and these are my 2 complex answers. 5 plus I root 23 over 6 and 5 minus I root 23 over 6. What I'll do is I will change colors so that the next problem is a different color for you guys. So we'll do pirate blue. All right, this is already in order and already set equal to 0. So we're going to write down what A equals, what B equals, and what C equals. So we know A equals 2, B equals 1, the coefficient of x, and C equals 5. If you don't want to keep rewriting the formula, you can write it on top of the paper up here and then write it once and keep referring to it. It's up to you, but I definitely think that you should have it on your paper instead of just in your head. Okay, so now when we're substituting negative b, we're going to have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 1, minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 minus 40. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. All over 2a, which was 2 times 2, which is 4. And now we're going to have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 39 over 4. Again, we can't simplify 39. You could just pull out an I. So the final solution is negative 1 plus or minus I root 39 over 4. Okay, so the only step left that we haven't done is to simplify inside of here, which we'll do on future slides. This is going to be what we're going to be doing today in your homework tonight. So again, this is not in standard form, so we're going to rewrite it as 5b squared plus 3b plus 1 equals 0. And then we know my a equals 5, b equals 3, and c equals 1. Again, on top, write the formula, or write it for each problem, up to you. But that visual is very important. So we're going to have negative b. So we're going to have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 9, minus 4 times 5 times 1, 4ac. I'm just substituting those values in, all over 2a, all over 10. So we're going to have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 minus 20 all over 10. Negative 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 11 over 10. So you can see here the discriminant is negative, so we're going to have two complex answers, which we do. Negative 3 plus or minus I root 11 over 10. So again, the discriminant does help us because we know that we're going to have two complex for this one. If you want, you can pause the next one and work on it and then just check the answer. Or if you're still unclear on what to do, you can work through it with me. Again, I'm going to change this color back to red just so we can see the difference of the two problems. So again, you have to put this in standard form. 2a squared plus 5a plus 5 equals 0. So a equals 2, b equals 5, and c equals 5. So now we're going to substitute, and we're going to have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 40 all over 4. And this is going to give me negative 5 plus or minus negative 15. So I root 15 over 4. Again, we're not able to divide 1, 2, 3 by the same factor, so therefore that's my final answer. All right, the next slide. So the next slide here, we are able to reduce, and this is as hard as it's going to get here. So I'm going to move this down a little bit. Let's see if I can pull this down, put the pointer on here, so that we have more room. Okay, there we go. We have more room now. All right, so first step is we are going to put this in standard form. 5n squared minus 4n plus 2 equals 0. You always want the a to be positive. So just up here, write the formula just so you have a visual. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So again, list everything. A is 5, b is negative 4, minus goes with the 4, and c is 2. So negative b, 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we have 4 plus or minus the square root of 16, and we have minus 40 all over 10. 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 24 all over 10. Now again, two things we can do with this discriminant. First of all, it's negative, so we know it's two complex answers, but we also know we could pull out an I and simplify 24 as 4 times 6. So we're going to rewrite it as 4 plus or minus 2i root 6 over 10. Now you can never go inside the radical. We always talked about that being like a locked cage, can't get in, but you can reduce. If all three of these guys have the same factor, then we can reduce it. And you can divide all by 2. So the final answer is going to be 2 plus or minus I root 6 over 5. So again, the radical doesn't get touched, but if all three terms have the same factor, then you have the same answer. So that's as hard as it's going to get. We're going to do the next one, which again, you're welcome to pause it and try it, but I'm going to work on it for those of you who don't want to pause it. So again, put it in standard form, x squared plus 4x plus 5 equals 0. And again, up here, a equals 1, just to save a space, b equals 4, and c equals 5. So going back to this formula, negative b, negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative 4, simplify the discriminant. We're going to have 16 minus 20 all over 2, which is negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 over 2. Now again, it's negative, so we're going to pull I out, and then we're left with square root of 4, which is 2. So as we learned in a previous lesson, the square root of negative 4 is going to be 2i. Okay, we learned that in a prior lesson. So we're going to have plus or minus 2i over 2. And again, all three terms have the same factor of 2, so divide it out. So we're left with negative 2 plus or minus I. You don't need to write over 1, and that's your final answer. You're going to have homework with the same types of problems. Any questions, of course, you can message me before 4 o'clock. I'll get back to you that day. Any messages after, I'll get back to you the next day. Have a good day, guys.